On this tape we're going to discuss middle game transition based on Karpov's games, and we will see the art of positional play that's designed right in the opening and goes throughout whole middle game. Let's see a couple example games. c4, b6, d4, bishop b7, d5. This is an unorthodox way to play for black the opening, because you're not supposed to develop fianchetto light square bishop before you play knight f6 and e6 to stop white's d5. Now, d5 move is the prelude for white's plan. Well, white decides what they're going to do right in the opening. So they want to shut off the light square bishop and kind of play for space advantage. So after d5, e6, a3. Now this move a3 also part of the basic strategy. The strategy is to keep light square bishops shut and limit black's activity. So the a3 move is to prepare the support of d5 square with the knight by playing knight c3. So knight cannot be attacked by black's dark square bishop by playing bishop b4. So practically a3 moves kind of secures d5 square, d5 pawn that shuts black's light square bishop. a3, knight f6, this is still part of the opening. Knight c3, and another awkward move for black. Bishop d6. We don't have too many followers of this opening. This is very unorthodox way to develop pieces. Now black is putting bishop in active position, but bishop does not have support of other pieces and cannot be active for too long. So we're going to see what happened. Knight f3, e takes d, and c takes d. Now we see that d5 pawn is very secure, therefore bishop on b7 will not see light of day for quite a while. So after knight f3, d, c, d, black castles, and white plays bishop g5, rook e8, and e3. Well, obviously the idea of bishop g5 was that white wants to finish development and they don't want to leave bishop behind their pawn structure, behind the e3 pawn. Bishop e7. See, bishop already is looking for some kind of function, for ways to function. So bishop e7, bishop c4, supporting once more d5 pawn. And now we know the light square bishop has to struggle. After bishop c4, h6, bishop f4. So what is white's plan now? White's plan to castle, move the center, and practically take over whole board. And we see now black's pieces are all on first three horizontals. And black is right now already suffering great deal with the space. Bishop f4, knight h5. Now obviously black wants to eliminate that bishop. Well, in this position already there is a threat, maybe, exchanging the advantages. So you see, if it was white's play, this is not white's plan. White does not have as a plan to play d5, d6. But it's a kind of opportunity here. They can redeem the advantage. So right now they have an advantage that light square bishop is shut. But if it was white's move now, then white could play d6 and let this light square bishop out. But in this case, white, after c takes d and bishop takes d6, white is going to have different kind of advantage, because they're going to have open d file, and black is going to have backward pawn and weak pawn on d7. This is a possibility. This is not something you plan for, but some concrete approach. So I don't know if white would have done it or not, but this is a thought. Knight h5 stops this temporarily, because threat is knight takes f4, and white decides to keep light square bishop. And after bishop f6, bishop d4. Now, the reason why white plays bishop d4, because knight on h5 now feels very uncomfortable on the edge of the board, and you can see the black's strategy definitely failed, because the one bishop was put on b7, and you see how active it is. The diagonal is very short here. The other bishop is on f6 after making 3 moves in the opening, and we know how valuable are tempos in the opening, and knight on the edge of the board. And the future of second knight on b8, b8 knight, is absolutely unclear. So what happened after bishop d4? Black played bishop a6. Now this may sound like some kind of a relief, because they're going to exchange that bad bishop that did not have any future. But right now, besides having bad bishop, black also has problems with the space. So white's opening planning was, for middle game, was very successful. They got space advantage. They totally misplayed every black piece, and they are better developed. So after bishop a6, bishop takes a6, and knight takes a6. Okay, this is not really happiness for black to exchange those bishops, because right now knight has a problem. This knight on a6 does not have any future. White castles, completing development. c5, bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, and queen d3, attacking the a6 knight. Notice that white still has idea of advancing in the center and get a lot of pressure in the center. And after knight c7, well, actually black played queen c8 first, knight d2. Now here is the planning. White's planning was always the center and space, and shutting off the light square bishop, which black solved that problem, but black never solved the problem of the center, because white is about to expand in the center, and black is going to have very hard time. There is no counterplay. White wants to play e4, f4, knight c4, and this center is going to be moving until it completely smothers black. So here it's white's like a python started the smothering and squeezing the mouse. It's like a snake. So knight d2, d6, knight c4. We see the immediate weakness number 1, d6 pawn. After knight c4, rook d8. Now rook goes from opened file to passive position, not by choice, because the quite famous grandmaster was playing with black. we don't need to know the names because I don't think it's really important. We want to concentrate on the game itself. A lot of times when I say who played white or black, that sets some kind of prejudice. So already they know, oh, if this guy was playing black, oh, every move I can criticize every one of his moves. Or if it was a very strong player, then everything he has done was correct. No, we don't go by that. We're going to be judge here, and we're going to decide what they have done right or wrong. Okay, after knight c4, right, rook d8, e4. So we see now white made the move towards the center. Okay, after e4, knight c7. Knight is very badly placed on a6. So knight c7. Now, very interesting move was played by Karpov. So he already has big positional advantage. Planning worked. We practically can close the case here because we know white has all kinds of plans, and now black wants to go maybe b5. So move played by white b4 is very powerful because what they want to do, they want to play b5 and completely close the game on a queen side and a continuous triangulation on the center of king side. Well, obviously the b5 move is bad because white goes knight a5 and creates more weaknesses like c6 square, and then center is going to be moving as well. Black will be practically lost. Oh, I should say black is practically lost right now. So after b4, knight a6. Now white is hoping that black is hoping white may take on c5 and black will retake with the knight, attacking queen, but white played b5, knight c7 back, and a4. So black is done on queen side completely. Actually, black is done on every side completely. So white, now we're going to see only white in action, and black is just like a witness here. Queen d7, f4, rook e8, rook a to d1. White has all the time in the world. They're going to prepare. They put every piece on perfect position before they push e5. Rook a d8, h3. This is typical Karpov's move. So he wants to make sure that no piece will jump anywhere and no piece is going to see any activity. And here is the perfect time to do that because black is totally hopeless, totally paralyzed. And h3, queen e7, and now e5. The game is practically over because after e5, black has to take de. Here we get to this stage when you do all you're planning for, whatever you planned, and you achieve everything, then you have to use just a little bit of calculation and concrete approach. So you took here, and after de, white played d6, black goes queen f8. You see, black is totally strangled here. They can't hardly breathe. They have like 4 squares for 4 pieces, and if you push one of the pieces, it goes over the board. So d6, queen f8, and now f takes e. I don't even want to describe how should person feel having this position because it's too emotional probably. So now knight f8, after f takes e, knight h7. I don't think we should talk about black's pieces position. I think they speak for itself. So there is only one move was knight better than knight h7. I think the best move black could have done here was to resign. That's the best move and most honorable move, probably. He played knight on h7 and queen f3, and after, right now, the knight is hanging because queen got off the d file. Knight goes to e6 and queen b7. Now white enters with a queen on a queen side and is ready to collect the whatever black owns on queen side, all the possession, black's possession. Rook a8, and here continue the strangling, and here black made the last squeak with g6, and after knight e7, king g7, knight c6, and breathing stopped here. So was the game too. So this is perfect example of planning, getting center. So that's, now let's go once more, not over the game, but over the first moves and planning. When the planning start and when the opening ended. Actually, opening ended here because this is not common opening. So opening ended in very early stage. Opening ended practically on move 2, because b6 and bishop b7 you are not going to find in any real opening moves. They wouldn't dedicate more than like a line or two, because that's not really a good way to play. So the way it started game was c4, b6, d4, bishop b7. Now this is the move 1 of outlining the plan. Now normally we're going to look further examples, and you will see that opening ends maybe on move 7, 8, or 10. Here, opening ends on move 2. Right now, we are not going to be discussing this opening. There are many ways to play for white. The other way to play for white is knight f3, g3, bishop g2, just quick development and having little advantage, maybe in development, maybe in space. But d5 move is a very ambitious move. Very ambitious. I think it's well justified too. White is guaranteed to hold d5 position with a pawn and support then, if you need, with a knight or with the other pawn, which will shut off the light square bishop and which will allow you to play e4 later on and get you some certain space advantage and advantage in the center. So that's what happened. We saw the perfect example, well executed, maybe because he's a good player. This may be one of the reasons. And the biggest reason here, the most important reason, that white was very consistent to whatever they planned for, and they executed their opening plan. So let's look at the other game that was the same. We have this exact same idea. The idea is to grab the space advantage and make your opponent's pieces very immobile, and this way and suffocate your opponent. Well, here is the game. Again, this has also been played by GM for black, and every game we're going to look on this tape is going to be played by Karpov. c4, e6, d4. Again, we are not going to see any flashy tactics here, maybe of any kind, with exception of very end maybe. It's going to be well-planned opening and well-planned middle game. That was actually, middle game should be planned right in the opening. You should plan your middle game in the opening if you want to see a good result. Knight f3, no, d4, knight f6, knight f3, b6. We have typical position from Queen's Indian. g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, bishop e7, castle, castle. knight c3. Actually, this opening was very popular in 70s, and this game was played in 70s. Karpov played a match, I remember, against Korchnoi, and I was helping Korchnoi then in that match. I was Korchnoi's second, and Karpov experienced some very unpleasant times playing this position with black. And now, interesting is to say how he plays the same position with white. Knight c3, knight e4. This is all opening. I don't want to really spend much time on this. Knight takes c3, queen takes c3, and we don't want to discuss the openings here because that's not what we want to do on this series. c5. Rook d1, d6. This is all opening. b3. Now, the typical opening move is bishop f6. And I've played this against, in my important game against Petrosian in Hastings in 79. It was bishop f6 without playing d6 and knight c6, but black chooses different plan. Not necessarily the better or worse, it's just different plan. b3, queen c7, bishop b2, and now they play bishop f6. Now, this is very inconsistent for black and bad planning. Why? Because if you go bishop f6, the idea of bishop f6 to put pressure on d4. But if you put pressure on d4, but the idea of d6 and b6 is to set up some kind of hedgehog pawn structure. Now, what is that? This is not consistent. So if you play hedgehog, then you don't need bishop on f6. You go knight d7, knight f6, and put rooks on c and d files. But if you play bishop f6, it's a little inconsistent with the queen c7 move and d6. And right now, white already setting up good plan. We're just off the opening, just out of the opening, and we are setting good plan. White is setting good plan to get big space advantage. Here, how it went: the bishop d2, bishop f6, queen c2. So white is thinking about maybe going d5, blocking the b7 bishop. We just looked at the approximately same example. Maybe d5. That's why they want to get off the queen from this diagonal, from a1 h8 diagonal, and also maybe setting up e4. This is the first step to get the big space advantage. So queen c2 is very useful move. After queen c2, knight d7, and now after e4, white already has space advantage. Rook fd8, queen e2. Now, how do you the plan is obvious. White has this, but black, notice black has no weaknesses. Black is prepared. If white pushes too hard, it may backfire. So white has to be very careful the way they plan to take over the center. After e4, rook fd8, queen e2, rook ac8. Black makes all the standard moves. Rook d2. And right now, black already has no plan. They have no plan. They just make random moves that, like queen c6, attacking e4 pawn. Rook e1, simply protecting it. Rook e8, and now queen d1. Okay, that's the threat number one. Possibly dc, and you see there are going to be, after, if white plays dc, there will be number of black pieces hanging on d file. So black has to do something. They're putting the rook on d file. If white plays dc, they will be able to recapture dc. So white keeps an option, the opening d file or pushing d5 and blocking their pieces, blocking black's pieces. So after black played rook d8, now we see, but black is very much strangled here. And it's interesting to see how Karpov takes advantage of it. So when you see the one person cannot maneuver as freely as you can because you have a lot of space, so he starts activity on the king side. h4. Now we're going to see why he can do it. Why is it any good? And after a6, black is still making waiting moves. Now white goes g4. Here's what white wants to do. Now, if the white plays d5 instead of g4, black is going to take ed, and after white takes ed, queen c7. This is also a much better position for white. But at least black is going to exchange the dark square bishops. But we have to know one rule. When you have positional big space advantage, you try to keep as many pieces on the board as you can. So you try to stay away from exchanging pieces. And that's why white wants to play g4. And if black makes some random move, then white wants to go g5, kick the bishop off diagonal, and then go d5. You see, now after e takes d and e takes d, you will see the difference. You cannot compare white's dark square bishop to black's dark square bishop. This is probably the best piece on the board, and bishop on e7 may be second worst, because bishop on b7 takes the cake here. This is the best one. I mean, worst one, I meant, of course. So what we do here, so the g4 was designed to kick the dark square bishop from the diagonal. Black plays g6, and white goes g5. Bishop g7. Now the question is, well, you can ask, what did white accomplish here? Did white accomplish something here by playing g4 and g5? They didn't kick black's bishop off diagonal. So what did they accomplish? Well, what did they accomplish? That they took more squares away from black. They took more squares away from black, and now they go d5. We see we are not weakening, white is not weakening their own position, because pawn on the king, white's king is very safe, because all black's pieces, you can tell, they have like a few inches of space here and every piece is there. So after d5, e takes d, e takes d. Black plays, queen was on c6 actually, and now black plays queen c8. Black plays queen c8. So now white exchanges the dark square bishop, and now you see the terrible piece. White has practically an extra piece. They can go even bishop h3 and have a beautiful bishop on that diagonal, and bishop on b7 is very much dead. Now white goes rook d to e2, taking over the file. King f8. No, king f8. Now white plays queen a1. h8 visit here is very painful. It's like mate. King g8. queen b2. Now what is this queen b2 move? This is very nice move. White cannot immediately take advantage of e-file. So queen b2 move stops black from simplifying position. Well, let's see what I mean by that. What I mean by simplifying position, if it was black's move, they can take on e2, white takes back, and now go rook e8. Now it's a little, so white is still much better, it's a little relief. So that's what this queen b2 move is designed for. Now if black plays rook takes e2, then white is going to play queen takes e2, and black cannot even step on e-file. So that's another, it's a very powerful move. Queen b2. Now black is looking for some activity. Knight f8. Maybe they want to jump with the queen to g4. So after knight f8, white goes queen f6. You see the final touch. Now rook e7 is threatening, and f7 pawn will be falling. After queen f6, black went knight d7 back. They did not blunder the d6 pawn. There was just no defense to rook e7, and with a mating threat. So black played knight d7, queen takes d6, and after knight e5, just one, as I said, almost every game, no matter how well you play positionally, ends up with most of the games anyway, ends up with some very simple, concrete approach to position. And after rook takes e5, black lost a piece and resigned. Now, let's look at the final position. You see how passive black's pieces are, and black is 2 pieces down. One that knight they just lost, and the other one is right here, that on the board but practically dead. Okay, so this is another good example, well planned from very beginning. Now, you know, I'm not going to tell you, it's very easy to do. You cannot just take a player of Karpov's caliber, and we are now analyzing his games of his prime, and do exact same thing, but you have any player of any level can improve their planning, and you have to try to think like this. So you have to plan right in the opening. What is your opening? What is the main objectives of the opening you're playing? What are you playing for? What are you aiming for? And where are you getting to? So let's look at another game. This is also interesting. What do you plan for? So we're going to have different idea of triangle. This is another Karpov's game, playing against another very famous GM. c4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, d4, knight f6, g3, castle, bishop g2, c6, knight c3, d5. Now this is some kind of a variety of Grunfeld defense. So queen b3. Now the idea of queen b3, first of all, protecting pawn and stop black's light square bishop to be developed in early stage because of b7 pawn. So after queen b3, e6, castle, knight bd7. Okay, we are right now away from opening. So what's white's plan here? The white's plan, this is a good way to plan your game for. Play against this bishop, one dead piece, and get a big advantage on whole board and the space. maybe c5, bishop f4, bishop d6 to get this kind of advantage. So let's see how the game developed. White needs to strangle black here in this game, and they do a very good job doing this. So after knight bd7, bishop f4, knight b6, c5, knight c4. Black knows they cannot be, knight on c4 cannot be trapped because can always go to a5. So after knight c4, queen c2, knight h5, b3. Now what is that? Why would white let black take on f4 and double to give them nice dark square bishop and double the pawns on a king's side? Well, maybe it's bad. No, remember the plan is, the idea is to strangle position in the center and make all pieces, all black's pieces passive. So what black played is knight takes f4, g takes f, and knight went to a3. Queen d2 and b5. Now black needs to support this knight on a3 not to get in trouble. So on the other hand, white didn't want to play queen b2 in earlier on a previous move, because after knight b5 black may be okay. So this does not really serve the purpose. So queen d2, b5, rook e1, rook b8, and it's typical prophylactic Karpov move, king h1. You have to notice here in this position, it does not really important what kind of move order you play. You have a plan and you be consistent. So whether you play king h1, is it super genius move? No. Is it a very strong move? No. Is it okay move? Yes. Every okay move that will be consistent with your plan is good. So is king h1 okay? It's okay. That's all it is. So a5, e3. We are in the same stage. Same thing about e3 move I can say that I said about king h1 move. f5, bishop f1. Okay, here the stage number one of the plan. His plan was in beginning to play against light square bishop, which was bad. Now this bad light square bishop has another brother on g7 that is just as bad, because there is no good bishop when you have 8 pawns on board. So white has one of those. But this bishop is not as bad. Why is not as bad? Because white has space advantage. When you have space advantage, that means your bishop has to be better unless it's blocked with their own pawns. So if you bishop on f1 somehow was on g3, that's a bad bishop. Bishop on f1 is a good bishop because it's going to go bishop d3. It just controls some squares in the center, and now white needs to start create some kind of a play. White has space advantage, and their pieces are more active. Knight on a3 is kind of forgotten. We don't know what it's going to do, and if it's going to do anything at all. So after king h1, a5, e3, f5, bishop f1, bishop d7. Now is bishop on d7 going anywhere? No. It just arrived where it wanted to go, which is d7. That's as active as it can get. Bishop d7, bishop e2. Well, why bishop e2? White cannot win this game at this position just having space advantage. Space advantage helps you to create activity, helps you to create play. And once you open position wherever you have space advantage, that will get you where you want to get. So bishop e2, probably the plan is start attack on king side. What else can it be? So all black can do is just sit and wait how white going to invade their position, when they're going to open, and what's going to happen. So black has no control of the game from now on. You know, lots of times, if you just, when I was making the opening tapes, I said, okay, we're going to get to this position, and white has, or black has, certain advantage. And then I get a lot of, well, what do you do with this advantage? And here, if you're a very strong player, I don't think you're going to buy my tape. If you're a grandmaster, you're not going to buy my tape. But I don't think all of you are grandmasters, so all of you want to be. But so that's what these tapes are designed for. Now let's see, how do we take this practically winning position, how we're going to take it home. So black plays bishop f6, and white goes rook g1, rook goes on opening file, and obviously the only area of the board where white can make significant progress is where they have space advantage, which is obviously king side and the center. Also notice that white has more knights. That means knights are better in closed position. So rook g1, king h8, rook g3. And here white is planning to double rooks, playing rook a1 to g1, and later on going h4, pawn h4, pawn h5, and opening black's king side position. After rook g3, queen e7, white continues with their plan, rook to g1, rook to g8, queen to c1. Now white is hitting black's knight on a3, b4 has to be played, and now white plays knight c3 to a4. Now this is one way to play, and what I would like also to do, instead of going knight to a4, knight d1, which is almost the same plan. Actually the a4, when Karpov played knight a4 in this, I don't think he wanted to go to b6. I think the square he wanted to go to b2 and then knight to d3 and have total access to e5 square. For example, if in this position white knight goes to e5 and black will take with the bishop, like bishop takes e5, and we're going to end up on e5 with a pawn, regardless which way we take. And here we want two knights. If knight from a4 comes to d3, we have two knights for e5 square, which makes it very valuable square for us. So after knight a4, rook g7. As I said, knight b2 and knight d3 still is an option, but we don't have to do it now. It doesn't matter. We could have done knight b2. We could have done queen f1. That's what Karpov played. And there's a lot of ways to play this position. This is totally closed position, and I don't think move order makes any significant difference here. So queen f1 was played by white. Rook b to g8. Black is preparing for a battle on king side. Queen h3. White has to do some improvement of pieces position. So queen goes to h3, knight goes to d3 and e5. bishop e8. And here is interesting. Knight goes to b6. Well, here is the change of plan. Is it a change of plan? I don't think it's a change of plan. But the reason why white played knight b8, because they want to play, you see, knight, they have concrete approach to the position. They want to go knight c8, hitting black's queen, and then put knight on d6, which is even better position than on e5. So after knight b6, that was played, black played queen d8, of course stopping knight c8. Now queen goes to h6. Remember, white wants to do, white can play here cat and mouse game, so they can put knight on b6, then remove it and bring it to e5. They can do anything they want. Black only just can sit and wait. Queen h6, rook c7. We cannot make any sense of black's moves because there are no moves that can make any sense for black left. So rook c7, knight to e5. Rook c to g7. Bishop to d3. Knight b5. Well, there is one piece that wants to come in the center, and now white eliminates. Bishop takes b5, c takes b5, and now black has two bishops, two bad bishops, and white has two very good knights. f3, bishop h4, rook h3. Bishop f2, so black attacks rook and e3 pawn, but right now the game almost very close to the end. After bishop f2, simple combination, rook takes g6. That's why Karpov allowed bishop f2 move. So now you can tell, it's obvious that bishop takes g6 leads to immediate mate. Knight takes g6, rook takes g6, and queen takes h7 mate. So this is very simple combination that's where you are right on the level of world champion. You can see it as well as world champion can see. You may have little difficulties doing it this just as well in different areas, but so after bishop f2, rook takes g6, black plays bishop takes e3, rook takes g7, rook takes g7, and rook to g3. Queen e7. Here's again, now we are in a position that needs concrete approach and calculation. Now if black plays rook takes g3, what happens here? There are few things may happen here. First of all, after simple h takes g, threatening queen f8 mate, and this is I think all you need to know about this position. Black played queen e7, rook takes g7, queen takes g7, queen takes g7. This is the outcome of a successful, one of the possible outcomes of successful attack. Well, attack does not have to end with a mate. If you win material or get winning endgame, this is like a logical conclusion and good result. So queen takes e6 leads to the mate on the wrong side, so we don't want to do that. Queen g1 mate. Queen g1 would have been mate. So white plays queen takes g7, king takes g7, and now white plays c6, and black must give up a bishop on e8. Bishop takes c6, otherwise white bishop takes c6, otherwise white simply plays c7 and c8, queening the c-pawn. Bishop takes c6, knight takes c6, bishop takes f4, and knight d7. Position is still closed and white has an extra piece, and we said if two knights were very good against the bishop, two bishops, it's just logical to assume that they will be very good against one bishop. That's what I think anyway. So in this position, black simply resigned. So what we can say, it was very well planned. White has space. White had space. White had more. Black had more weak squares. They had better pieces, and well planned middle game resulted to a win. Now, of course, as I mentioned before, it's very, very difficult to perform with the same accuracy as this game was performed by Karpov. But remember, planning is very important, and planning starts in the very beginning of the game. Actually, when I was preparing for this series and I was working on it, I did mention what we're going to be doing it, and I didn't have enough time with the crew to teach them how to plan chess, because I had to teach them what is chess about first. But I know the producer learned a little bit from that, and you can see producers' games, they have certain results now. Even producers now started already planning ahead in a game. So what we can say, that you don't have to be the best player in the world, but you have to know you are on the right track if you start planning your openings and planning for middle games. So, of course, this, we just touched the positional aspect of planning in closed position, where Anatoly Karpov was probably the best ever. But there are other aspects of the game which we're going to have to discuss, like attacking, how to create tactical positions. This is all ahead, so just stay with us and you'll learn something. Thank you very much.